Hey, you're listening to Pure Light, where we explore how to believe in yourself and be happy with who you are by learning to trust your worth and question your doubts. A lot of people get stuck because of doubt, fear, and negative self-talk. I can help you stop letting that get in your way so that you can do what you want. My name is Ailey. I'm a coach and a Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher. This is episode 19, and it's about inner resistance. So for those of you who've ever had inner resistance, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never had it, I'll take a moment just to talk about what it's like, because I used to live with pretty much constant inner resistance. And to me, what that felt like was, it felt like a weight on my chest, like on my heart and on my throat. So it felt like this kind of heavy energy that like I really wished I could kind of pull off, but I really didn't know how to do anything about it. So I just lived with it. And it was not something I really enjoyed. I feel like it was probably blocking my joy, but I don't think I was aware of that at the time. And it was only after I got into yoga that it kind of started lifting. And I remember noticing it lifting because I started to notice more joy and wonder and presence. Like I was way more present in my life. And it was a shift that happened gradually over time. And so I never really thought about what specifically led to that lifting of that weight on my chest and on my throat until I was at my coaching program. So when I was at Duke for my coaching course a number of years ago, I was talking to a woman there who was staying with her daughter. And she hadn't stayed with her daughter in years and was talking about how her daughter had this kind of angry and like angsty energy. And she also commented on how different my energy was compared to her daughter's, because she's like, oh, you guys are about the same age. And like, it's interesting because you're like this and she's like this. And I said to her, you know, I used to be like that. And she was like, really? And I said, yeah. And then she was like, well, what changed? And I couldn't name it in that moment. And it was right at that point that we happened to get called back from break. So we were called back into session. And I told her I'd think about it and get back to her. And it didn't come to me until the next morning. And I was all excited to tell her. So I grabbed her and pulled her aside and was like, I figured it out. And she was like, okay, well, what was it? And I said to her, I stopped discounting my experience of life. And she looked at me like I was totally insane. And I get that now because that's really awkward language. So what I mean by that is that I stopped ignoring how I was feeling and what I was thinking. And I started to trust that the feelings and thoughts that I had were there for some reason. And so it was up to me to figure out what that reason was and to take action accordingly based on them to make myself feel better. So instead of treating my feelings like a problem or something that I didn't want to have, I started to be like, like, what is this trying to tell me? And that's what led to that shift and that lifting of that like heaviness and the shift in my energy, like for other people, but also in terms of my own inner experience. The thing is with our inner experience is that resistance comes when we don't allow it to be what it is. Emotions are just a form of energy. And when you allow them to pass through you, inner resistance fades. So do you treat your feelings like friends or enemies? Do you welcome them, or do you try to ignore them or numb them or pretend they aren't there? And do you let yourself have the full experience of them or stifle them or shut them down in some way? Do you see them as an obstacle to being happy and like as something that you would rather not have or something that gets in the way? Because ultimately how you treat your feelings and the meaning that you give them will determine the amount of inner resistance that you have. Because when you learn to welcome your inner experience, the resistance dissipates. Emotions don't go away unless you process them. They're stored in the body, and they're also stored in your energy field or in your consciousness. And they're not going to magically disappear or go away just because you don't want to deal with them. They're going to become part of the emotional clutter that ultimately forms your inner resistance. So your feelings are ultimately here for a reason, and it's up to you to figure out what that is, because they're trying to tell you something. So it's your responsibility to pay attention to that and to figure out what that means to you. Because doing that will help you process your feelings, and it'll also help you lessen any inner resistance. and you start to feel a new level of peace. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you're listening. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, may you be guided by your light.